Welcome back. So next up, I'll be actually zooming over, as it were, to the kitchen, the Clearspring kitchen with Chef Koj. So can I say hi? Hello. Hi, Koj. Can you hear me?
Hi, Huka-san. Very well, thank you. I can hear you.
Good, thank you. Am I right to think that you're going to show us how to make nasu no dengaku nasu? Peanut butter
Yes,
miso
right.
aubergine, is that right?
Yeah, so nasu dengaku with a bit of a twist.
Great. So I will just hand it over to you and I'll come back with questions.
Thank you very much. Well, we put a video out, so we'll quickly show the video as a recap, and then a chance for anyone to ask questions about nasu dengaku or using Clearspring products in general, or Japanese, anything about Japanese cooking. I mean, I've already learned how to make dorayaki, which is one thing I'd never tried yesterday, and I'm looking forward to wagashi. But those are not my specialty areas. But anything more savoury, perhaps, is open for questions later on. So we'll start with a recap of the video on how to make nasu dengaku. Hi, welcome to Japan Matsuri Online. My name is Koj, and today I'll be cooking with Clearspring. I've chosen one of my signature dishes from my new book, No Sushi. It's based on a Japanese classic, nasu dengaku, aubergine with miso. And I will take 3 Clearspring ingredients, miso, mirin and peanut butter. And I'll add in some spice as well with some umami paste. I was a finalist on MasterChef in 2012, and I became a chef in 2013. I'm half Japanese and half British. I opened my first restaurant, Kojima, in 2017, and my book was published earlier this year. Now, a little bit about Clearspring. Here's a short video I would like to show you.
I'm Christopher Dawson, CEO of Clearspring.
I'm Maria Dawson-Lloyd, Commercial Director of Clearspring. Clearspring is a family business, and for the last 25 years we have been pioneering organic, authentic, fine food from all over the world.
The ethos behind Clearspring, I wanted to find foods which I would be happy to give to my children. At the same time, I'd be supporting and sustaining organic agriculture and traditional food cultures. In 1979, I made my first visit to Japan. It was the first food culture where I saw people had learned how to get maximum nutrition from the vegetable kingdom. So I decided it was right to start a company which could introduce these foods worldwide.
Today, we have over 260 products. Our products are organic, refined sugar-free, free from preservatives and additives, and on top of that, 100% plant-based. In our Japanese range, we have our award-winning Yaimon Tamari soy sauce, our mirin, green tea and matcha, noodles, tofu, our miso range, and in our fine food range, our Italian olive oil, vinegars and purees, pastas and tomato sauces. We believe in providing for future generations by supporting organic agriculture and a plant-based diet. Being a family brand, it makes us special because this is what we do every day. I have been brought up eating Clearspring products all my life. Our family to your family and all the families around the world.
There you go, that's Clearspring. Now time to cook. So I'll introduce the ingredients and then show you step by step how to put this spicy peanut miso aubergine dish together. At the end of the video, you'll find details of how to enter our competition to win a copy of my book and a box of Clearspring ingredients. So there we have it. Thank you for watching Japan Matsuri Presents with me, Chef Koj and Clearspring. That was spicy peanut miso aubergine.
Thank you, Koj. That was wonderful. That looks absolutely amazing. So we are actually receiving any live questions as well from you viewers. So if you have any questions for Koj, please do put it up on Facebook and we'll catch that and ask Koj directly. In the meantime, so I noticed that you grilled the aubergines first. Do I have to grill that first or can I just pan fry it straight away?
You can pan fry it straight away. There's two reasons really that I do it that way. One is because we designed this particular dish for the restaurant, and obviously it helps speed up the final cooking process if you have pre-baked your aubergines. But the other reason as well as taking a bit longer, you find that aubergine soaks up a lot of oil, so I find that the end result is a bit less oily if you do it that way.
Virgin. So if the person who's cooking at home don't have sunflower oil, I guess many people might have olive oil at home. Would that be okay as well?
I prefer sunflower oil. Olive oil I find has quite a distinctive taste. So when I'm trying to get the taste of the peanut and the miso, it seems a bit complicated. I mean, I have done it myself if I don't have any, but I do prefer more neutral flavour oils compared to olive oil, especially not extra virgin olive oil. I don't think it really is suitable for this dish.
For Japanese dish. And I can imagine the mixture of white miso, the peanut butter and mirin must be such a lovely sort of sauce to use on this dish. But is there any other dishes that we can actually use that sauce for something else?
Yes, of course. I mean, Dengaku is a classic sauce, mostly with aubergine, but obviously you can also do tofu Dengaku, or if you're a bit more adventurous, Konnyaku Dengaku. And my restaurant is not only vegan, but a lot of the Clearspring is a vegan company, so the recipes that I do for Clearspring are all vegan recipes. So we've also used it in the restaurant for marinating pork or chicken. And the lovely thing is you can start with that very, very simple Dengaku base, which is the mirin and the miso, and then you can make variations on that, such as using the peanut butter or some chili or ginger, whatever you like. You can go in many, many directions once you've got that first Dengaku base. And personally, some recipes for Dengaku you'll find have got egg yolks in them to make it richer and creamier and puffier. For me personally, I don't eat eggs. I'm allergic to them, so I've always left out the egg from my Dengaku sauce.
Lovely. My mouth is literally salivating now just listening to all the things that you could cook with it. I sort of prefer, I remember, my mother cooking it with like a boat shape, that the entire sort of half of the aubergines. Can we do that at home, or do you prefer to cut it in chunks like you did?
Well, if you do that, I mean, it depends obviously the size of the aubergine. The aubergines that we tend to get here in Britain are much bigger. Yes. In Japan, they tend to be a little bit smaller and the flavour is slightly different. So, the main reason that we cut it into small pieces like that was practicality in the restaurant, because I had put Naji Dengaku on in the restaurant, but I saw that the British people were struggling to eat it with chopsticks. And one of the things that we've always promoted in our restaurant was, sharing lots of dishes. So cutting it into pieces made those dishes shareable between 2 people or 4 people. If you're going to do it in the sort of what I call the traditional presentation, just half an aubergine, I find it does help to score the flesh, because that helps the sauce stay on the top and seep into the flesh, and that's another advantage of cutting into pieces. All of the pieces get coated in the sauce, so it's much more about the sauciness of the dish, and we found that British people love that.
Okay. And do I have to use sweet white miso for Dengaku?
In general, no. I find that it works very well with this dish. I find it works well because I like that the peanut has a very savoury flavour. One of my favourite breakfasts is peanut butter and honey.
Okay.
And I find that sweetness balances the slight bitterness of the aubergine, and it balances the sort of dryness of the peanut butter. But we do make other dengakus around this time of year. We would typically be making a barley miso that goes very beautifully with pumpkins. And there's hacho miso, which is even stronger flavour. So you can try them, but you have to modify how much mirin you put with it. The mirin does two things. The mirin firstly dilutes the miso so that you can use it like a sauce. As a paste on its own, it's very difficult to work with. It's so thick. When it's more of a sauce with the mirin, it's easier to work with. And the other thing it does, of course, is bring sweetness to the dish to balance the saltiness of the miso.
So you just mentioned Caroline found mirin, generally speaking, too sweet, and she was wondering the Clearspring's mirin. What does it taste like, and is there any sort of a more creative way of using mirin?
Yes, that is an excellent question. I always do this in my Japanese cookery lessons. I take what I call commercial mirin that you will often find in supermarkets, and I take Clearspring have two main types of mirin, Japanese rice mirin and Mikawa mirin, and I give each person a teaspoon, and they try each one. And some people love the sweetness of the commercial mirin because I think a lot of people have developed a very sweet tooth. But if you look at the ingredients, it's fructose and glucose syrup. It's not really mirin. Clearspring mirin is rice and water, and the natural sweetness comes from the rice. And when they taste that, they enjoy the subtleness of the sweet flavour in the Clearspring, not the in-your-face sweetness of the commercial syrupy mirins. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got Mikawa mirin, and when you taste that, it's almost like tasting slightly sweet sherry. It's got a much more aged, refined flavour. So the best thing to do is do a taste test on all of them. You will immediately see the difference in taste, and then when you turn the label around and look at the ingredients, it is completely different.
Wow, interesting. So we have another question from a viewer. So in Japan, sweet potatoes are widely used in cookings. Do you have any recipes that you really like, or you could recommend to the viewers?
Yes, and this is not something I've had for a little while, but maybe a couple of years I've done this dish, but I was recreating something I had in Japan. Sweet potatoes baked over a charcoal barbecue, so they had that lovely smoky charcoal flavour. A little bit of butter, and a little bit of gamashio, which is just black sesame seeds crushed with salt. And for me, it was delicious. It was a sweetness, the perfume from the black sesame, the lusciousness of the butter, and of course a bit of saltiness as well. So yeah, for me, sweet potato is simplicity.
Lovely. And I have another question from Kavita Favel. One of the things I appreciate about Japanese cuisine is the wide range of very different dishes you can make with a relatively small set of core ingredients. What are the key things you love about Japanese food and ingredients?
No, this is a question from KV, who is a food blogger that I met many years ago, and I love to see her. And we often find each other at events involving Japan because she loves Japan. The things that I love about Japanese food is being able to teach it, and when people realise just how simple it is. And I think they have to often go to Japan to see for themselves how beautiful cooking can be when it is done expertly and simply. And that's the best thing for me as a cookery teacher, teaching the simplicity of it. And the other thing that I like about Japanese ingredients generally is that they have very long shelf life. So in Britain, that's very useful because you can imagine that people might be one day cooking French or Spanish or Thai, and they don't get around to cooking Japanese, maybe more than once or twice a month. but because a lot of the ingredients are dried or fermented, preserved, they last a long time, and so you can come back to them. You don't have to buy a new packet when you come to cook Japanese food.
Lovely. And as you mentioned, I understand the Clearspring is a vegan company, and you've already shared with us this lovely nasu no dengaku, aubergine, grilled aubergine with miso and peanut butter. And we talked about the simplicity of the sweet potato dishes as well. Any other dishes you recommend that they can cook at home?
Yes. I always made it a priority to have good vegan dishes in our restaurants, and there are a few in my. I wrote a book which came out in May. There's two dishes that I would highlight. One is to contrast with this dish. It would be nice if you were doing this for a dinner party where you're trying to replicate that sense of Japanese occasion with lots and lots of different dishes. On the one hand, the nasu dengaku is an example of yakimono, baking and frying. It'd be nice to balance that with a very clean and fresh dish, like I did this version of beetroot sashimi. So it's just beetroot that's been cooked and sliced very thinly, and then maybe a little ponzu, or I made a teriyaki sauce out using the beetroot juice as well. So you get that lovely combination of earthiness, sweetness, and saltiness. So that would make a good complement to the aubergine dish. And then to finish, another dish that was very popular with people who didn't like so much the creamy, sweet, chocolatey desserts. We had a dish that we took umeshu and we made it into a jelly using agar. So that kept it vegan. And then we made a granita out of yuzushu. So it's a the umeshu is slightly sweet, but the yuzushu is quite sour. And at the end, the result is two textures, jelly and crunchy ice, that makes a really lovely, refreshing and palate cleansing dessert.
Lovely, that sounds absolutely amazing. I have another question for you from Lloyd Warren. Hi, Koj. What's your go-to comfort food?
Hi, Lloyd. Lloyd went to Japan. I met Lloyd. He came to my restaurant. So hello, Lloyd. Lovely to see you on our webinar today. My comfort food, I think I would have to go for agemono, which is deep fried things. And I think that's probably, lots of people would have that as a favorite. But for me, growing up, one of the reasons that I didn't focus so much on sushi was I was growing up as a child in the 80s, and there wasn't so much fresh fish. The only places that we could get good fresh fish were in North London, and we lived in Southland. So it was a big journey to get there. So we never really did sushi unless we ate out, which was very occasionally. What we tended to do were things like shabu shabu and karaage, which is fried chicken, or tonkatsu, which is fried pork cutlets. And those were nice things to do, spend a bit more time at the weekend maybe preparing them. But those are my memories of childhood comfort food. Thank you for the question, Lloyd.
Yeah, I agree with you. The deep fried agemono, it's definitely my comfort food too. So it's interesting, you mentioned about what you couldn't get, what you can't get in the UK in order to cook Japanese food. I mean, it's varieties and things that you can get nowadays is a lot more than back in the 80s. But still, I found that the rice that you can get in the UK, the so-called Japanese rice, is quite different to what you can get in Japan. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I've always thought it's because when I go to Japan, I'm in a happy place. It's when you go into a restaurant, part of what you experience is also your mindset when you go into it. And when I'm on holiday in Japan, I'm feeling happy about being in Japan. But I think honestly, one of the reasons is that we don't get Japanese rice here. Most of the rice that's produced in Japan, in the areas of Japan that have the best fields and best water supplies, that will naturally stay within the domestic market. So growing up, we used to buy big bags of I think nishiki rice, which I think is grown in California, or in the case of Clearspring, their rice is grown in Italy. And I've known Italian chefs to cook with Japanese rice, and I've known Japanese chefs to cook with Italian rice because the grain style is similar. So I think the reason it tastes different is because often it's grown in a different place. It's not necessarily Japanese rice. As you say, it's more Japanese style rice. And of course, also when you're in Japan, generally the people who are cooking it for you have much more experience in cooking it. So they're just naturally better at it.
Yes, indeed. I have another quick questions for you here. I've heard the umami flavour described in many times, but I'm still not sure I quite understand. Can you explain in more details, please? Umami.
Okay, yes. This possibly won't be a quick one. When I was growing up, I learned about 4 tastes in my mouth. So sweet, sour, salty and bitter. And I think there was even this sort of map of the tongue where I think the bitterness was down the outsides, and it wasn't until maybe about 20 years ago that I started hearing about umami, which is actually something that was identified more than 100 years ago by a professor in Tokyo, and he was traveling home one day and he wondered why he was looking forward to his wife's miso soup so much. And he went away and he studied it, and he found that the reason that it was so delicious was this umami, the taste of deliciousness. And he identified that it was a protein on the kombu that delivered the savouriness. And since the last 20 years when I started hearing about it, the main person in this country that's been promoting umami has probably been Heston Blumenthal. And he's done a lot of work with food scientists on where umami comes from, and he's identified that there's lots and lots of umami, for example, in tomatoes, and there's lots of umami in cheese and cured meats and things like that. So it's the English translation is sort of delicious savouriness, and it's definitely more than saltiness. But for me, I experience umami, and not everyone gets this, but if I'm hungry and I've maybe taken a bit of very mature cheddar or parmesan and I get a little juddering in my jaws that tells me that it's umami. And there's also some theories about why we develop these tastes in our tongue. Sweetness makes sure that we get immediate energy, so from sweet things like carrots and things like that. Saltiness, well, that helps us regulate the water levels in our body. Bitterness often is a sign of poison. So before we knew what foods to eat, bitterness would tell us to avoid those things, perhaps. And sourness often told us things had gone off. So the example would be milk turns sour when it goes off. But then umami also is what your body is telling you when it needs to rebuild itself. It needs more protein. So it's a sort of unconscious desire to have protein.
Wow, interesting. Wow, never knew that. So much science behind it. I must say, this last few years, all this kind of cooking programs, they have started to use the word umami in this country too. It's really interesting. I have another questions for you. Any ideas for dishes that will impress dinner guests, but which are easy to make?
Yes, right. The first thing you should do when you're starting to cook Japanese food is make a soup. And the reason you do that is because you need to make dashi. And the reason you need dashi is because it is the building block of umami and goes into so many different sauces and for cooking Japanese food. So you start with your dashi and then you make a miso soup. And there are examples of this in my book. You might like also to think not just about what you're cooking, but the way you're cooking it as well. And that's also very important in Japanese cooking. So you wouldn't want to have a meal that is all deep fried. You want some that's deep fried, some that is light and fresh like sashimi, some that is grilled like yakitori skewers. But a typical course that I would do would be things like gyozas, which are delicious, very simple to make the filling, a little bit more tricky to learn how to pleat them and close them. But of course, like everything in cooking, practice makes perfect. So soup, gyozas, yakitori would be a great one. So if you're vegan, my favorite one is mushrooms and leeks, and you can just baste that lightly towards the end with some teriyaki sauce. And we've done the aubergine, and of course rice. You should also learn to cook rice. So there's a few rice dishes in my book. So one is nuniku chahan, which is garlic flavored rice, and you can either make that with butter, which helps bring the garlic flavor out, or you can put garlic into oil, which keeps it vegan as well.
Lovely. And the earlier recipe that you mentioned, the beetroot sashimi, that sounded absolutely amazing as well. Those wonderful recipes that you just shared with us quickly, are they all in your cookbook?
Yes, a lot of those are, yeah. The cookbook is not exclusively vegan, because it was more a representation of the restaurant. But yeah, when I cook with Clearspring things, I try to keep those vegan.
And can I buy it from, I don't know, Amazon, or where can I buy it from?
The book. If you go to my website, Koj Cooks, and there's a direct link to my publisher, which is awaywithmedia.com. And if you look up the book section there, you'll find it. No sushi.
Lovely, thank you. So I have one more question for you here as well. Which staple Japanese ingredients do you recommend everyone to have in their store cupboard?
Obviously soy sauce, at least one type of miso, some dried seaweed, clearly rice you need, sesame oil, and maybe rice vinegar. With those things, you can take almost any fresh ingredients, whether that's English or American or any vegetables or any fish or meat, and turn something delicious. Oh, and you need mirin as well.
Yes, absolutely. We've only got 2 minutes left. So before you go, I just want to share with you, to the viewers, if you share on the Facebook or any social media that the video that the Koj showed of him making aubergine peanut butter miso aubergine nasu no dengaku shared on your page, and so then you will have a chance to win the products of Clearspring and also Koj's book. So please start sharing and tag us as well at the same time. Japan Matsuri presents. So any final words from you, Koj?
No, just to say thank you very much for tuning in. It's been a lovely experience to be part of Japan Matsuri this year, especially in this new format.
Indeed.
And good luck with the competition. We'll announce it on social media later on.
Wonderful. Lovely speaking to you. Thank you.